Alright, we have 9.6.0 PTB patch notes. And I heard there's a lot of killer changes in this one, so let's go over them. Alright, important, as a result of engine updates, the download file size for this update will be larger than normal. Alright, so for many engine updates, there's been lighting changes and some other things. So you might see some more visual changes than you otherwise would have. Alright, features diminishing return update. While in a trial, repeated positive or negative gameplay modifiers and status effects are now affected by diminishing returns. Identical modifiers granted by powers, items, perks, and offerings will now be reduced progressively as they become stacked. Alright, so anything that is stacked is going to be not as strong as they used to. The gameplay modifier with the highest absolute value is always applied, while lesser ones are progressively lowered to a percentage of their original value. So the game prioritizes the highest value, reduce the impact of lesser ones. Okay, so the first value is going to be 100% modifier, the second value is 50%, third is 25%, the fourth is 12.5%, and the fifth value and up is a 5% modifier. So you can imagine like a perk with like leader, since it's from another survivor and it affects you, that will only be a 5% modifier to what the original perk used to do. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it, but I know that there's some builds that are very, very strong that can make the game feel a bit unfair. But it's also going to make synergizing perks a little less fun. Alright, dev note. After 10 years of Dead by Daylight, the ability of killers and survivors to stack modifiers indefinitely has enabled ever accelerating and more intense gameplay. With this update, we aim to normalize how modifiers from different sources interact against each other in order to better preserve the integrity of the game. All major gameplay modifiers and status effects for both roles are included in the update. Additionally, this change will help us as developers create new interesting powers, items, and perks with our roster of existing game modifiers, with far less risk of creating unintended game-breaking scenarios. We will closely modify this change during the PTB and look forward to the feedback. Alright, so interesting change. I know they want a little more control over the game and making sure that things are not overpowered. But yeah, it could make things a little less interesting too, so I'm not sure how I feel about it. Alright, progress bar update. The progress bar for interactions has a new animation to reinforce the speed differences. The color has been updated so it represents the speed of the interaction, becoming yellow if it's faster than normal, and red if it's slower than normal. Previously, the color was dependent on the individual contribution. A player could see the bar as red even when going faster. Alright, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to change the color of these. They didn't mention that. Because I know some people are red-green colorblind, so making it red is not going to be helpful for those people. Visible team perks. The match details have been updated to show the loadout of players of a same team. Perks, items and add-ons, and offerings. Actually, this is a really good update. I thought they were going to do this a very long time ago and they just never did it. Maybe they're just talking about doing it. Alright, so I guess we might finally get it this time. I hope so. Elements can be hovered to display their descriptions. The loadout of the opposite team is not displayed until the match is over, following the final score screen behavior. I'm hoping they don't show the items and add-ons, because they do mention it here. And if they don't show it for the killer, then the killer might not bring Franklin's demise or some other perks that affect items. But I know sometimes as a killer and I see 4 flashlights, I do want to bring Lightborn, and that might be a big nerf for killers if they can't see what items the survivors have. So there's a negative side to this. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Alright, spectator mode. While in spectator mode, most elements in the HUD can be hovered to display their description, perks, items, add-ons, goals, status, effects. Alright, so it's going to be interesting for tournament players. I don't think most of us are really going to bother with this too much unless you want to stay in the game. For me, personally, most of the time, if I'm killed in the game, I don't want to stick around. I want to get to the next game. If you want to see the outcome of a game, I guess you could see a little more stuff. So yeah, interesting. Aura's customization. New aura types are available for color customization. Highlight elements as a xenomorph. Looking at specific control stations. Surface elements. Generators shown by deja vu or because of eruption. Deja vu shows you 3 gens that you could get a gen bonus repair speed for. And eruption, I guess, shows the gens that you kicked. So yeah, okay. Marked elements as a xenomorph, marking a controlled station. Killer objects, the hag traps, the singularities biopods. Alright. And breakable walls. Now, if I was behavior, I'd probably just remove breakable walls because it just kind of limit the game. And most of the time, we don't interact with them. I know sometimes, like with Thwack, it's like an easy way to get value out of it. Instead of breaking a pallet, you can just find survivors in the map. For me, though, breakable walls are kind of just a useless part of the game that's been around. Alright, content, killer updates, the Blight. Decrease the Blight's default movement speed to 4.4 meters per second, was 4.6. Breaking a down pallet now reduces rush tokens down to 2, below the maximum. And resets the current rush tokens recharge to 0%, including the basic break, special break killer actions. Power discretion update to reflect the change. Alright, I was listening to a Blight main actually talk about this, and basically you should be able to catch up to survivors with your rush ability. And it's kind of similar to Hillbilly too, in my opinion, because the one add-on that increases your speed also slows you down just a little bit. So the idea behind it is that you should be able to use your power to catch up to survivors, even though your movement speed is slightly slower. It shouldn't matter at all. Blight shouldn't be able to just catch up almost immediately after breaking a pallet with his ability. Alright, the Doctor. Decrease the delay of shock therapy attack to 75%, 2.75. Decrease the delay of shock therapy attack to 0.75 seconds was 0.8. The Cannibal. Increase the maximum chainsaw speed to 5.45 meters per second was 5.35. Alright, so Bubba's going to get a really nice buff. And so is the Doctor. These are not very big changes, but I think for Bubba, it's actually going to be a little more noticeable. 0.75 is not much, but a lot of times around loops, sometimes I try to shock them and they still go over the pallet. By just a little bit, I'm going to be able to shock them fast enough that they won't be able to fall this time. I don't know. It's not a big change, so I'm not sure if it's going to be noticeable enough, if that makes sense. The Ghost Face. Decrease the cooldown of Night Shroud to 15 seconds was 17 seconds. Alright, so that's pretty nice. Faster cooldown. He's not the strongest killer in the game, but being able to get back in your power is really nice, especially if people are getting you out of your power constantly. So it's only 2 seconds less, but that might be noticeable. Alright, the Demogorgon. Increased shred movement speed to 19 was 18.4. That's a nice change. Increase the shred's turn rate to 55 degrees per second was 27.5 degrees per second. Alright, that's a massive change. So before, it seemed like you can only move it just a little bit. Now it's a little bit better. Increase the duration of undetectable after traversing the upside down to 12 seconds was 5 seconds. Alright, I'm very opinionated about this one. The Demogorgon stomps around like a T-Rex. You can hear him stomping. It's kind of like the Nemesis too. He has the same problem. Because he's so loud, all this stealth mechanic doesn't really make sense to me at all. He's too loud. So even though there's a big change, does it even matter? I've tried to use his add-ons for undetectable to increase it too. So even though there's, you can increase that duration on undetectable, I found no noticeable difference. Most of the time, survivors will notice you just by sound alone. So I think they should remove the sound of his footstep if he's undetectable. Otherwise, don't even bother with this, in my opinion. Alright, the Dredge. Increase the movement speed while charging the Rain of Darkness to 4 meters per second was 3.8 meters per second. Okay, I think that's when he's, trying to mind game at a pallet and he's using his ability. So you might be able to mind game a little bit better. It's not by much, but it's still a lot better than it was before. And you might be able to mind game a little bit better. It sounds great to me. Alright, the Mastermind. Decreased the recovery time of Virulent Bond to 2.7 seconds. Was 3 seconds. Okay, yeah, Mastermind's getting a little buff. I enjoy that. Decrease the charge time per tokens to 5 seconds. Was 5.5 seconds. And increase the duration of the chain bound window to 2.5 seconds. Was 2 seconds. Alright, so I'm willing to bet that the add-on, the egg, is probably going to get changed because of it. But it's nice that his base duration is going to be increased, making the window a little bit better. Alright, the Skull Merchant added support to multiple power icons. New power icon map to deploy drone, rotate, and recall action. What does this even mean? We know the Skull Merchant is really weak. I'm hoping that they did a lot of changes. I'm not sure what this means because they're not mentioning enough of it until I see it in action, to be honest. I'm hoping they'll make a change pretty soon here. I don't think they've done it yet, but I know they're talking about a rework. Alright, the Unknown. Decrease the cooldown of the UVX to 6.25 seconds was 7 seconds. Decrease the weakened Survivor Vision Linger duration to 0.75 seconds and was 1.25 seconds. So I'm guessing you can get out of UVX a little bit faster, but you can get UVX power faster. So I'm not sure what I think about this. I mean, even though you can hit them sooner, it means that the survivors can get out of the state faster. So, oh, it sounds like a buff and a nerf. Oh my gosh, but I think it's going to be an overall nerf. Because survivors can already get out of their linger state so fast already. It's going to be even sooner. So if you mess up your shot, they're going to get out of their UVX even faster. I don't think it even matters that the cooldown is sooner. It's not soon enough. Okay. I'm not sure what I think about it. The animatronic. Decrease the time to recall the fire axe when embedded in the environment to 6 was 7. I'm not sure why that was changed. I think it was fine already, but it's only 1 second difference. Decrease the time to recall the fire axe when embedded in a survivor to 8 seconds was 10. Completely unnecessary. I think it's strong already. Decrease the battery consumption per camera in use to 6 seconds was 7. I mean, most people don't even use the cameras. Decrease the battery consumption upon survivor teleport to 12 was 15 seconds. Yeah, these things don't really matter at all to me. I mean, some survivors do use the cameras more often. It does give them a lot of information that they wouldn't otherwise. Most of the time, it puts you at a big risk of getting attacked. Alright. Key binding for the grab axe button updated to use power input was the attack input. I think it was fine as is. I don't know why they're changing it. Okay. The killer add-on updates. Nurse add-on heavy panting rare extends the duration of a lunge after more than one blink by 10% was 30%. Right. So you're going to get a little baby lunge. I don't know. Most perks don't work with nurse anymore like they used to, so it's kind of unfortunate to have them changing this stuff. Because the add-ons do more than perks usually do. Not a big fan of it. The Ghostface add-ons. Walleyes Matchbook Common. Decreases the Night Shroud recovery time by 2 seconds was 3 seconds. Alright, because they changed it up here, they had to change it down here. Of course, I knew it. I called it. The Masterminds add-ons. Loose Crank. Increases the movement speed between the first and second fairly bond by 15% was 8. And the egg increased the chain bound window by 20% was 50. Alright, so obviously since the base kit is even better, they're definitely nerfing egg a lot. Which is unfortunate. I think every mastermind, every Wesker uses the egg add-on because it's so good. So now it's going to get nerfed. So it's going to be harder to get around corners, probably. It's not as good as it used to be. But it's alright. The animatronics add-ons. Restaurant menu decreases the minimum time to retrieve an axe embedded in the environment by 10%, was 20%. They're obviously making things base kit and nerfing the add-ons. Access panel, very rare. While aiming the fire axe reveals the survivor within 6 meters of a security door. With killer instinct was 4 meters. Alright, so this one's a little buff. Alright. Survivor perk updates. Fast track. Whenever another survivor is hooked, you earn 1 to 3 tokens, up to 9. While repairing, whenever you hit a great skill check, a great basic skill check, spend all tokens. For each token spent, Degenerate gains 1%. Permanent progress was 2. Alright, so they're obviously nerfing fast track. We all saw this coming. We knew it was too strong, the buff that they gave it. So now they're just nerfing it back. So that's everything I'm going to mention in this video. I know it's a lot to talk about, but it just seems like an overall, all the changes are going to be killer changes for most of it. And there's not much survivor changes. So if you're a survivor main, sorry, this update's not going to be doing much for you. Except for fast track and a few things. And I'll also be trying to cover this in the PTB, trying to see some of these changes for myself. So stick around for that. And I'll see you guys in the next one.